Well, we are all familiar with Michael's Wine Cellar, home of one of the biggest selections of wine here on the Suncoast. But if Dad prefers spirits, Michael's can provide some helpful hints in choosing those as well. Sean King is here with some whiskey offerings for Father's Day. I have to confess, Sean, I know how knowledgeable you are about wine. I did not think to come to Michael's Wine Cellar for other spirits.
Yeah, it has been a progression, I think, at Michael's over the last many years, and now the single largest whiskey obsession and festival takes place in Sarasota, and the biggest tasting happens in Michael's Ballroom.
How great.
And I had a crash course in whiskey and Scotch last year, and this is kind of a fun thing for me because my dad, who loved four things, one of them we can't talk about because it's Lucky Strikes, but he loved golf, he loved grilled steak, and he loved Scotch. Oh. And you have the last day of the U.S. Open is on Father's Day, which is not coincidental. You have a grilled prime rib, and you have Scotch.
Oh,
and
great.
So
now, I think whiskey, Scotch and all whiskey, I think a lot of us are embarrassed to say that we don't know a lot about it. And I know some people can be turned off because they maybe don't really know how to taste it. So you brought some examples and a tasting. So what are we starting
We're
with?
starting off with a blended Scotch from Scotland.
Okay.
And
it's coming from the right place.
It's coming from the right place. And so the biggest difference between Scotch from Scotland and Scotch from Ireland is the still. Everything in Ireland is going to be malt in a triple distilled, and in Scotland it's going to be typically double distilled, and there's going to be a little more mash.
Okay.
So
and again, all Scotch is whiskey.
All
not
Scotch
all
is whiskey.
Is Scotch.
Right.
Scotch is one type of whiskey.
So this is the Monkey Shoulder, and this is a blended Scotch, and it's a really affordable, smooth way to go if you want something that is different than the typical Dewar's or the like. So.
And you mentioned beforehand that we can, if we didn't want to taste, we can sniff.
Smell.
That's another way to tell.
So these all smell uniquely different.
Well, I sniffed and tasted.
I'm going to do the same.
You're getting the full
I'm getting the
spectrum.
full view.
And you'll notice the trend in the last many years that you use one giant ice cube because it melts at a slower rate. And what makes Scotch more palatable for people who haven't had it before is that a little bit of water. And my dad drank Scotch all the time, and I hated it. And he would always say to me, "It's an acquired taste." To which I said, "Why acquire it?" And then I had good stuff, and then now I'm hooked.
You acquired it.
I acquired it.
Yes. This is very good.
Yeah.
And a little bit of the water, does that do anything to the flavor?
Yeah, it does. It kind of mellows it out, and it also kind of allows it to expand a little bit on the tongue, and it's not as hot going down.
Okay.
So
nice. So this is a great way to taste if you are not sure if you like Scotch yet. All
I'm
right.
sold.
Pretty
So this is great.
I like it.
So for a proper tasting, we should dump the existing if we have any left.
Yeah. And you can be, while it may not be the most sanitary, when I dump, I literally just use my little index finger and hold the ice cube in.
Okay. Marsha, would you pass the?
I'm the dumper.
Now show me this.
Here you go.
So I go like this.
All right.
Oh, how did he do that?
There we go.
I'll do it. I'll run it
Would you do that
I'll do it for you.
Oh, because I
Now
don't
let's
wanna
get
lose my
into
ice
the.
cube.
Let's talk about the next one.
So the next one is going to be a single pot
Thank you.
from Ireland.
Here you go.
And this is going to be a lot
You can start with
We're
Marsha.
laughing here for nothing.
I'm making the
Uh-oh, we're
reach
only on the
even though it's
first
not proper service.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is a single pot still. What does that mean?
It comes from one pot, one copper pot, as opposed to the blending of 4 or 5.
Okay.
And quickly, lastly, we're going to do a bourbon from Kentucky. And in bourbon, to be bourbon in America, it has to be made from at least 51% corn.
Okay.
Oh.
And people love bourbon because it tends to be slightly sweeter, although not sweet.
So we're not on the bourbon
We're
yet.
not.
We
We're
are
gonna
on the
get
green
there.
I was gonna say,
spot,
this
but
is
that's where
not
we are
sweet.
heading
This
up.
is not sweet at all.
Whoa.
You got to be Irish to like this.
A little
I
stronger. Little stronger. So this might be for more a dad who's already kind of has his palate for whiskey.
A proper Irishman would drink this after their Guinness.
I love that. Now I
I'll be
know
proper.
when I go into people's homes and even my family's homes, there are bottles of whiskey that are prominently displayed and very proudly. You know,
Yeah.
oh, I have this bottle. I got
I
this.
have this bottle.
So
And-
it's a nice gift if
Right.
Dad appreciates.
In back in Ireland, this would be one of those bottles you display.
Okay. All right. Now it seems such a crime to
Yes, we
pour,
were just
but we
getting
do want to get
started.
to the bourbon.
Here we go, Joey.
All right.
Gotta hold on to that ice.
There we go.
Here we go. Okay.
There we go.
I'm
And
not sorry
Dump
to
away?
see that one go.
Okay,
No,
give Marcia the dump pan.
Sorry.
so
That's not
Jefferson.
called
I
dump
had it.
pan,
That was
is
good.
it?
I know you touched on this a little bit, but where does Jefferson's
So
Reserve
this
fall?
this is bourbon, so this is at least 51% corn. I think this is actually 60% corn.
I'm going to
Okay.
drop that into a conversation somewhere.
You should, because they'll go, oh my gosh,
She's
let me
so
get
smart.
you a free glass.
Now, Sean, we don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to say, as everyone starts to taste, you brought us ribeye to taste.
Yes.
Is there a particular food group that goes well with whiskey when we are trying to pair?
You know, that's a tip. I think that bourbon and ribeye go well together. You know, a lot of people like cigars with it too.
Okay, that's fair.
because it kind of slows down the way you drink it, and it kind of speeds up the length of the cigar.
How is the bourbon? Everyone?
I like the first one.
Okay.
Yes.
I did too, Marcia,
Yeah.
although these are not bad, I'll have to say.
I'm
I'd
a
like
fan.
to see what this tastes
Yes.
I'm
like
a fan
in
of the
dump bucket.
Reserve.
This is your favorite?
Yes, I'm a fan of the Reserve bourbon. Thank
What
you,
about
Sean.
you, Will?
Yeah, this is great.
Yes, great. So many
Sold.
great things to
Sold
learn.
on all.
Thank you, Sean. If you'd like to know more about wine or spirits, you can stop by Michael's Wine Cellar or find them online at michaelswinecellar.com.